Chag said. He sat real still, like he'd been taught. Back straight, hands folded, feet tucked beneath the seat. Elijah knew the rules on a Birmingham bus in 1962. Knew the eyes that watched. Knew which ones didn't blink. His mother, Laverne, leaned gently against his shoulder, her body giving into exhaustion. 12 hours on her feet cleaning another woman's house, scrubbing another man's spit from a sink, folding clothes she couldn't afford to buy. Elijah glanced at her hand, fingers still twitching in her sleep like they were wiping down countertops in a dream. Outside the bus window, the sky had that heavy gray color it got before a storm, the kind of color that made people whisper about God's temper. But inside that bus, it was already stormy, just quiet like a grave. This is Injustice Brown, and I'm Mark Joie. If this story stirs something in you, I hope you'll subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like Elijah's ain't rare, they're just often buried in silence. The wheels clattered over a pothole. Elijah didn't flinch. He was watching the front of the bus, watching the white folks laugh and lean into each other like they own the air, watching them stretch their legs and sling their arms across the backs of seats they didn't pay extra for. Up there, they smiled like the world had never told them no. And back here, Elijah could smell the oil on his mother's uniform, could feel the wooden slat under his thighs, the one with the chipped paint and the splinter that always caught his pant leg, the sign above his head, red-colored section, same one. That had been there since he was born, and he was only 14, but already it felt older than him, like it had been waiting on him before he ever took his first breath. Then the bus hissed to a stop. A man stepped on, white, broad-shouldered, smelling like tobacco and grease. He moved slow, like he wanted people to notice him. He looked around the bus once, then let his eyes settle on Elijah. Long, too long. Elijah met his stare, because something in his chest said not to look away. And the man, he smirked. Boy got nerve. He muttered, loud enough for the silence to carry it. Elijah blinked, didn't move, didn't breathe deep, just stared back. He wasn't sure if the man meant to scare him, or if that was just who the man already was. And in that space between them, something passed like an understanding, but cold and cruel. The man didn't sit, just stood near the front, arms crossed, like a reminder, like a warning. Elijah's mother stirred next to him, rubbed her eyes. We almost home, she asked, her voice dry and thin. He nodded, almost. She didn't notice the man, or maybe she did and chose not to see him. That's what surviving looked like most days. He wanted to ask her questions. Why she always told him to be careful, to be quiet, to never stare too long or walk too fast. Why she cried when he got his first day in school, but didn't smile when he showed her. Why she kept his father's photo turned face down in the drawer. But Elijah didn't ask. Not here, not on this bus. Instead, he stared out the window again, watched a black boy run alongside the street, chasing a stick like it was a race car. Watched a white cop glance at the boy, then look away. Watched a world where some lives moved freely and some were expected to wait. The bus hit another bump. The white man chuckled, like the whole thing amused him. Elijah wondered if he even knew his name. The bus stopped again. Laverne gathered her purse, adjusted her headscarf, and stood. Elijah followed. They stepped off without speaking, just kept walking, down the dirt path, past the same grocery store that wouldn't hire his uncle, past the church that had been burned 3 years back, past the silence that never seemed to end. Elijah didn't say a word that night, but in his chest, something had shifted, and even though he didn't know the name for it yet, it felt a whole lot like a question the world wasn't ready to answer. Chag said the house was quiet, that kind of quiet that presses on your chest, like something waiting in the dark, listening. The clock ticked slow in the kitchen, each second louder than the one before. Laverne sat at the kitchen table, a folded sheet of paper in front of her, blank still, but her hands, they already knew what they wanted to say. The pen felt heavy between her fingers, like it didn't want to remember, like it didn't want to bleed. She looked toward Elijah's room. The door was closed. His light was off. He'd gone to sleep not long after they got off the bus, eyes wide open until they shut. He didn't say much over dinner, just picked at his food and stared at his plate. Like the answers were in the cornbread, Laverne turned her eyes back to the page. Then she started writing. Emmett, I don't know what made me pull out this paper tonight. I think it's the way our son looked at that man on the bus. He didn't flinch, just sat there, jaw tight, like you used to do when somebody tried to knock the man out of you with their stare. You would have been proud of him, or maybe scared. Her hand paused, maybe both. She closed her eyes, and just for a moment, she was back there, 1948. The tree, the crowd, the sheriff pretending not to know who tied the rope, her knees hitting dirt, her scream getting swallowed by the wind. She'd buried it deep, buried it for survival, but she never forgot. She opened her eyes and kept writing. Elijah's asking questions now, real ones, not baby questions. Questions I can't lie around. Why can't we sit in the front? Why do they look at us like that? Why are we always last? I want to tell him the truth. I do. But it hurts, Emmett. It hurts to see him so sure that the world's supposed to be fair and to know he's about to learn. It ain't. She wiped her eyes. He asked me last week what you were like. I told him you were kind, smart, that you made people laugh even when they didn't want to. I didn't tell him what they did to you. Not yet. I don't want him carrying that weight. Not while he's still a boy. But Emmett, I see you in him. The way he watches everything. The way his hands shake when he's trying not to cry. God, you're stubborn in him, and you'll fire. God help him. She stared at the words. There were things she wanted to say, but didn't know how to shape. Things about guilt. About feeling like maybe she should have left town before it happened. About how she still sees Emmett's shoes by the door some mornings, like her mind is playing tricks to help her survive. But she just kept writing. Sometimes I wonder what you'd say to him, if you'd tell him to fight back or keep his head down. If you'd still believe in this place like you used to. I used to. I don't anymore. Not really. Not after you. But he does, and I'm afraid of what that hope will cost him. The page was almost full now. I just needed to say this somewhere. To you. Because you're the only one who'd understand. I'm trying, every day, to raise him right. To keep him safe. But there's a part of me that's always waiting for the phone call, the knock at the door, the thing I can't stop. I hate that I live like that. But I do, and I think you would too. If you saw the world he's walking into. She signed her name at the bottom, slow and shaking. Laverne. She folded the letter once. Then again, she walked to her room, knelt beside the old wooden dresser, opened the bottom drawer, and tucked the letter under a stack of clothes she never wore anymore. She sat there for a while, just breathing. She would never show that letter to Elijah, not because it wasn't his, but because she wasn't ready for him to carry all that pain yet. Not while he still had wonder in his eyes, but in the way she touched his shoulder when he passed, in the way her voice cracked when she told him to come home before dark, in the way she watched the news with the sound off and tears in her throat. That letter lived, even if he never read it. It shaped everything. It was hot that day. The kind of heat that makes the sidewalk shimmer, that crawls into your clothes and sticks to your skin like punishment. Elijah had just finished mowing old Mr. Tyler's yard, soaked in sweat, $5 in his pocket, and a head full of static. The kind of static you get when you're 14 and don't yet know if the world wants to beat you down or swallow you whole. He walked down the road toward Miller's General Store, wiping his brow with the sleeve of his shirt, trying not to breathe too deep. Dust was thick in the air, flies buzzing, nothing out of place. Just another summer afternoon in Alabama. The little bell over the shop door rang when he stepped inside. Cool air hit his face like mercy. He headed straight to the back cooler, eyes down, not looking at nobody. Grabbed a bottle of grape soda, just like always. Took it up to the counter and waited. The man behind the counter wasn't the usual one. This one was younger, pale, thin, lips, narrow eyes. Looked at Elijah like he smelled something rotten. Elijah placed the soda down gently. The man didn't speak, just stared at Elijah's hands. Then he leaned forward, voice sharp. What else you got in your pockets? Elijah blinked. Just my money, he said. The man smirked like he'd been waiting on that. Lying little punk, he muttered, then turned toward the back and shouted, call the cops, boys trying to steal. Elijah's heart dropped. I didn't take nothing, he said, pulling out the crumpled dollar bills. I was gonna pay. But the man stepped around the counter, fast, grabbed Elijah by the arm, hard enough to bruise. Elijah yanked away. The bell rang again, a different sound this time, not soft, not friendly. The police officer stormed in like the floor was on fire, guns out. No words, no questions, just orders, hands on your head. Elijah froze. 1 second, he was a kid with soda in his hand. The next, his face was slammed into tile, knees on his back, cuffs tight enough to slice skin. He cried out, but they didn't listen, didn't care. People stared through the windows. Some turned away, some laughed, and Elijah bled onto the floor. By the time Laverne got the call, he was already behind bars. She burst into the station, dress still damp from dishwater, apron still on, eyes wide, voice cracking. My boy ain't no thief, he's a child. They made her wait, sat her on a bench like a dog begging at a back door. After an hour, a lawyer came out white, polished, calm like a man discussing the weather. There's no evidence, he said, but that doesn't mean he's innocent. Laverne's hands shook. Please, let me see him. The lawyer sighed, like her pain was an inconvenience. He'll be out soon. You should be grateful. Boys like him, it usually ends worse. Grateful. That word stuck in her throat like glass. 2 nights. That's how long they kept him. 2 nights in a cell colder than December. 2 nights of being called boy, animal, thief. 2 nights without sleep, under buzzing lights and laughing guards and food to spoil for rats. When they finally let him go, Elijah didn't cry, didn't speak, just stepped out the door, blinking in the sun like it hurt. Laverne reached for him. He didn't flinch, but he didn't lean in either. Just walked beside her, hands in his pockets, head down. She tried to feed him that night, his favorite tokra stew and cornbread. He barely touched it. She sat across from him, watching. Elijah, she said softly, you didn't do anything wrong. He looked up, and the look in his eyes, it was hollow and loud at the same time. That don't matter, Mama, he said. They already decided. She couldn't argue, couldn't lie. Not this time. He went to bed early, left the lights on, and she sat in the living room for hours, listening to the silence crawl through the walls. Something had been taken from him, not just freedom, not just dignity, but trust. Trust in fairness, trust in safety, trust that if you followed the rules, you'd be all right. That's the part they never talk about, the quiet robbery, the way a system could steal a boy's spirit and still call it law. From that day on, Elijah walked different, watched people different, spoke less, thought more, and every time he stepped outside, he carried the invisible mark on him, that unspoken sentence they wrote across his skin, guilty, just because. Chag said it was a Tuesday, sky pale and stretched thin, the air thick with that kind of southern weight that makes your shirt cling to your spine before you even get where you're going. Elijah had stayed late at school for extra reading. He said it was for the test, but really, it was because he didn't like walking home right when the halls let out. Too many eyes, too many chances for something to go wrong. He walked with his hands in his pockets, shoulders tight, head down just enough to show he wasn't looking for trouble. Just a boy going home, trying not to take up too much space. Then he heard it. First, just a murmur, voices rising, not angry but determined. Then the sound grew, filling the street like water overflowing from a crack in the concrete. He turned the corner, and there they were, a line of people, black, mostly, young and old, walking shoulder to shoulder. Some carried signs, others carried nothing but the steel in their spines. They moved like a wave, slow and certain. A few were singing, voices shaking but still loud. He froze. His feet wouldn't move. His chest tightened. He looked behind him, no easy way out. The march had spilled across the block. They weren't coming for him. They weren't chasing him. But somehow, he was already in it. One woman passed by, maybe in her 30s, holding her baby with one arm, a cardboard sign with the other. The baby looked at Elijah and smiled like the world wasn't broken, like it didn't know yet. Then a boy about his age brushed his shoulder. You walking or standing? The boy asked, no malice, just matter of fact. Elijah didn't answer. He just kept moving forward, not fast, not proud, but not leaving either. They passed the courthouse. They passed the diner where he and his mother weren't allowed to sit. They passed the store, that store. Elijah's hand curled into a fist in his pocket, thumb rubbing the edge of the scar the cuffs had left. On the other side of the street, white folks stood watching, some quiet, some laughing, a few shouting, go home, you people think too much of yourselves. Ain't nobody gonna change nothing. Then came the officers, helmets, clubs, smirks that didn't try to hide. Elijah's breath caught. A woman in front of him reached back and took his hand. She didn't look at him, just held it, firm and warm, like a reminder. He held on. They stopped in front of the church. Someone started singing again. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. The officers shouted, told them to disband. Nobody moved. A loud crack rang out, a club on pavement. Another voice shouted. Someone screamed, and Elijah saw it, an old man knocked to his knees, glasses flying, blood on the collar of his shirt. Two young men dragged him back up, arms around his sides. And still, they sang. Elijah's heart pounded, but he didn't run. He didn't run. He stayed. For the first time in his life, he felt the fear move aside. Not disappear, but step back, just enough for something else to take root, something bigger, something louder than silence. Later, after the crowd thinned and the march slowed, he broke off quietly, took the long way home, wiped the dust from his shoes before walking inside. Laverne didn't ask where he'd been. She was busy cooking, humming a church hymn. Maybe she knew. Maybe she just chose to let it be. That night, Elijah opened his notebook, the one he'd stopped writing in after the store. He flipped past the blank pages, found a fresh one. He wrote slow. I didn't know we could fight back. He stared at the words, then underlined them. Twice. He didn't tell anybody what happened that day. Not his mama. Not the teacher who asked why his shoes looked scuffed. Not even himself. Not out loud, but something had changed. He'd felt it in the rhythm of the chants, in the grip of that woman's hand, in the echo of voices rising against, the weight of everything trying to keep them quiet. He wasn't just a boy walking home anymore. He was part of something now, and the silence, it had finally cracked. It was the smell that woke him first. Not the smoke, but the sharp, bitter sting of burning wood and something else, something deeper, like hate made solid. Elijah sat up fast, coughing. Flames flickered outside his bedroom window, orange and alive. Then came the sound, crackling walls, shattering glass, his mother's scream slicing through the dark. Elijah. He bolted for the hallway. He'd hit him like a slap. The wallpaper peeled like skin. Laverne was already at his door, barefoot, coughing, grabbing his arm. The kitchen's gone. She gasped. We gotta go. Now, the front door was jammed. They went through the back, stumbling over chairs, stepping through smoke that clung to their skin like tar. Outside, the cold air cut sharp, but it couldn't cool the fire eating the house alive. Elijah turned to look. The roof collapsed in. The flames danced higher. And there, stabbed into the lawn with 2 nails and a crooked piece of wood, was the sign, Move Out. An asterisk. Laverne saw it, didn't say a word, just pulled Elijah close and held on like he might vanish. He didn't cry, not yet. Neither did she. They just stood there in the dirt, barefoot and broken, watching their world turn to ash. The fire department showed up 20 minutes too late. No sirens, no hurry. One man climbed down from the truck slow, cigarette still lit. Looks like a total loss, he said flatly. Didn't ask if anyone was hurt. Didn't look at the sign. Didn't even look at them. Laverne didn't respond. She was staring at the window, the one above her bedroom, where the dresser was, where the bottom drawer used to be, where the letter lived. It was gone now. She never got to give it to him. Didn't matter how carefully she folded it, how deep. She hid it. He found it anyway. Neighbors came out one by one, some silent, some whispering prayers. One woman brought a blanket. Another handed Laverne a tin of cornbread, still warm. Someone gave Elijah a pair of shoes, too big, but dry. The firemen packed up and left before the smoke even cleared. No police, no investigation, just black air and red coals and the kind of silence that makes your soul hum. Elijah sat on the curb, coughing into his shirt, his eyes burning not just from smoke, but from what he saw in that fire. It wasn't just their house that burned. It was his drawings on the wall, his father's old coat in the closet, the book he'd been reading, the one where the hero actually wins, the framed church photo, the birth certificate, the letter, all gone. People told him later it could have been worse. They were still alive, after all, but he didn't feel alive. He felt scraped out, hollow, like the fire had burned through the middle of him and left only skin behind. Laverne sat beside him, her apron covered in soot. Her hands were trembling. She didn't cry, not even when she looked at the ground where their front steps used to be. Elijah, she whispered, voice soft and thin like thread. We still here. That's all she said. Not it'll be okay. Not they'll pay. Just we still here. And somehow, that meant something. Maybe not enough, but something. The stars blinked above them. Quiet and far away, the neighbors stayed. Nobody asked questions. Nobody needed to. They just sat with them, not because it fixed anything, not because it made the world fair, but because love, the real kind, doesn't need permission. It shows up anyway. Elijah leaned against his mother's side, his face stained with ash, his heart heavier than it had ever been. He didn't know what would come next, where they'd sleep, what they'd do, but he knew this. They tried to erase him and failed. The fire took everything, but not him. ChatGPT said. The chalk dust clung to his fingers, soft and familiar. Elijah stood in front of the board, sleeves rolled up, collar slightly crooked, eyes scanning a room full of young faces, black boys with big dreams and short tempers, black girls with sharp minds and quiet questions. Some wore the weight already, even if they couldn't name it yet. Others still carried the light. He never talked about the house, never mentioned the fire, or the cell, or the sign in the yard, but somehow, those stories echoed in every name he called, every date he wrote on the board, every truth he taught that didn't live in a textbook. He spoke of Harriet, not just as a conductor, but a soldier, of Malcolm and Martin, side by side, not rivals, but brothers fighting the same war, of the marches that didn't make the news, of the women who built movements and were buried beneath the credit. Some days, a student would ask, "Why do they hate us so much?" He'd pause, take a breath, and say, "They don't hate you. They hate what you remind them they're not." That answer never fixed it, but it was true. And sometimes, truth was the only armor he could give them. The school was small, underfunded. The ceiling leaked when it rained. The heater rattled. But the room held power, and Elijah never forgot what it meant to stand there to be the man he once needed. One day, after the last bell rang and the desk sat empty, he sat at his own, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and began to write. To the son I don't have yet, I've never met you, and maybe I never will, but I want you to know what this world is and what you are inside it. I won't lie. It's hard. There'll be days when it feels like everything is built to break you. Some of it is. But hear me, you are not broken. You are not wrong for being loud, or smart, or angry, or soft. You are allowed to be all of it. Don't shrink yourself to fit someone else's idea of safe. This country will ask you to prove your worth 1,000 times. Do it once for yourself, and never again for them. You will walk into rooms where your name tastes foreign in their mouths, where your hair is a conversation, where your presence feels like a question mark. Don't answer with silence. Be the sentence. Be the whole page. And when they fear you, because they will know that fear is just the shadow of respect they were never taught to show. I've seen things I pray you never will. I've felt cuffs where bracelets should be. Watched fire erase every photograph of a boy I used to be. But I also saw strangers become family. I saw a march turn into a movement. I saw love show up in ashes and rebuild something real. So I write this, not to warn you, but to bless you with memory, with rage that knows how to build, with a story that didn't start with slavery and doesn't end with struggle. I was once a boy with questions. Now I give answers. That's the only way we win. He set the pen down, looked out the window. The sun had dipped low, shadows stretching. Across the cracked floor, the room was empty, but he felt full. He picked up the letter, cleared his throat, and read it aloud, not to anyone in particular, but to every child who'd ever walked his path, to the past, to the future, to the air itself. His voice didn't shake. It rang steady, like his mother's used to, like the chants in the street, like the echo of feet marching home. The letter wasn't hers, but it carried her hands, her sorrow, her strength, her fight, and when he folded it and tucked it in his drawer, he smiled. This time, it wouldn't burn. It would wait for someone ready to carry it.